Alrighty guys, it is Qaaman here today, and right now is the perfect time to ask you guys this question, as over the last two manga chapters you guys have been extremely mixed in your opinions on it, to the point where I kinda don't know what you guys think because the opinions are literally mixed person to person. And this is rather rare in Dragon Ball, where, you have something come out and you usually generally have like a pretty good sense of what people think. The majority of people kind of, think a certain way, and the majority of people don't think a certain way. But this time it's so mixed that a lot of you guys are really enjoying this filler stuff, seeing other characters get shined while Goku and Vegeta are out of the picture, and others are just not caring at all and sitting around until this whole Black Frieza stuff comes back. And obviously we're all waiting for the Dragon Ball Super anime to return. And as a result of that, guys, I'm making this video to ask you because I'm obviously going to post a poll, but from what I'm getting at here, guys, it seems like a lot of you feel like this is pointless because we kind of already know how this is going to end, because Dr. Hito is going to end up in prison and this is going to lead into Dragon Ball Super Hero. But at the same time, I find it interesting to figure out how the guy got sent to prison in the first place, which is, I think, one of the most interesting things about it, because it's directly giving us lore that we didn't know. And in a lot of ways, this doesn't fully feel like filler, because at least there's a plot going on specifically that does tie into one of the main plots of Dragon Ball. It's basically a prequel, and as a result of that, I think it is necessary and doesn't really feel like filler to me. But I could also understand on the side, for those of you who are seeing Trunks going into high school and Goten perpetually doing nothing as he never does, why you guys can definitely feel about this. And in general, when it comes to filler manga in general, guys, I think one of my things is this. I generally feel that filler manga specifically does kind of feel like a waste of time, because generally manga comes before anime. And if manga comes before anime, you usually expect filler to be in the anime, but not necessarily the manga. So as a result of it, because it's a filler-esque type of manga for Dragon Ball, I can definitely understand a lot of you feeling impatient about it. But personally, if I'm just going to give you my thoughts, I explained in both of my discussions on chapter 88 and 89, I think it's pretty good. I don't really have any major problems with these. Obviously, they're more obviously catered towards like gag humor and silly stuff, but despite all of that, I feel like it's Toriyama-esque in nature, at least, and in a lot of points. Obviously, Toriyama in the 80s got away with a lot more stuff than he could get away with now, but you basically get the point that we're getting at here. I feel like the stories are definitely scaled down, and I feel like they find effective ways to create tension for its characters, which is something that Dragon Ball has had a huge problem with. And the primary reason with that is because, obviously, Goten and Trunks are way too strong, or shall I say, really, Trunks is way too strong for these small-scale villains to really be a threat, because obviously these guys are so weak compared to a planet-busting beyond character like Trunks that it's like, okay, well, we know that these guys obviously aren't a threat, but when you think about what the plot's actually doing with Dr. Hito, and the fact that his classmates are the ones, and including mine now, that get into trouble, then it kind of makes you care a little bit more on a small scale. Going back to the Great Saiyaman arc in Dragon Ball, in the manga specifically, and even in Dragon Ball Z, I feel like those episodes were good for what they were, even though Gohan obviously, is like so ridiculously powerful that it's like, yeah, obviously you can't really have any tension with like a bunch of random goons, fighting against Videl and stuff, but because Videl is the vulnerable character, then it adds some level of tension to it, and it makes us care somewhat, because you're kind of wondering, well, how's the hero going to do this? It's the same thing with Superman. Obviously, unless you have kryptonite, you can't really stop Superman directly, so how do you create tension? You mess with other people, and I think because of that, even though our characters are not necessarily in danger, I think they've done an effective job at doing that. I think they've done an effective job at making, Trunks in the present timeline go in a completely different direction from his future counterpart, specifically because I feel, honestly, that the characters have to go in two completely different directions, and what they've also done, too, is I feel like they've also done a very good job at, you know, obviously changing Mai's character, because obviously in the future timeline, Mai and Trunks were, you know, very close for very obvious reasons, because, I mean, let's just be honest, everybody else was basically dead, and they really just needed each other. And in that, they found a very, very strong bond, whereas in the present timeline, because both characters are growing up in a significantly more peaceful world, then you can basically say that this Mai is not going to be the same type of character, and in order for her to quote-unquote get with Trunks, they're gonna have to write it in a totally different direction, even if they look identical. And the thing that, you know, a lot of you were talking about in some of our more recent videos is that, you know, the anime and the manga basically hinted that Trunks and Mai were gonna get together in the present timeline, which is why a lot of you felt that, you know, Mai going to high school isn't the grossest thing in the world. And I can definitely understand that, because if you go back, you know, to what we saw, even going back to Battle of Gods, I mean, they were basically, like, teasing the whole, you know, Trunks-Mai relationship from very, very long ago, and as a result of it, you know, it is an interesting side story to see how Mai and Trunks could eventually get together in this timeline, even if she is literally, like, 3 times his age. And, you know, I feel like that's going to be a very interesting thing for our character specifically. The only problem is, though, is that how do you write the Pilaf gang in this timeline? Now, obviously, you know, the Pilaf gang has definitely taken a huge change, because all of them basically work for Bulma now. They all are basically at Capsule Corp, and they're really, like, allies now, whereas, you know, in Dragon Ball GT, and, you know, even in Dragon Ball, I mean, they were always villains, but they were always, like, villains that you didn't take too seriously, kind of like Team Rocket, where it's like, yeah, you're not a good guy, but you're also not really a threat, so we don't really care. And as a result of it, now that the Pilaf gang are kind of allies, I'm very curious to see what they do with their direction of their character now, because in the future timeline, you know, it's implied that something really bad happened to them even before Black, you know, caused all the problems in the future, because obviously Mai made that statement. And as a result of that, I mean, it kind of makes you wonder what happened to the Pilaf gang, because Mai was never shown with the Pilaf gang in the future timeline before everything got erased, so you assume that they were probably killed. I mean, obviously, if they did survive somehow, they eventually got erased, and there are just a lot of different mysteries there, but I do think that ultimately, though, that the Pilaf gang is written significantly better in this manga adaptation as opposed to what we have in the future timeline. And I definitely think that having the Pilaf gang around is going to add a lot more gag humor, which I feel really keeps the balance of Dragon Ball together. If there's any type of characters that are going to give you a constant source of, you know, humor in the series, I think the Pilaf gang would be perfect for that, as they try to normalize their lives and kind of work together with our main characters. So ultimately, I think that it can work out for the better, but I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section below.